everybody. It's week 6 of the high school football season. Just about halfway through, a little over halfway through the season. Hope everybody's season has gone well so far. We will be heading into district play relatively soon. So I want to just make sure that we are at the top of our game. We've got about 7 plays to go over today, mostly in the passing game. As a reminder again, these training tapes are for training purposes. We are not out here to degrade or show up any one or crew of officials or players or coaches. We're just trying to get better by looking at how plays are handled in different parts of the state. And so with that, we'll get to our first play this week is going to be a kickoff, and we're going to miss a hold in the middle of the field. So I'll let it run through. We're going to see this kickoff happen, and want to put our eyes right here in the middle of the field, somewhere around right there, where we are going to see a hold with a spin and a takedown. I'll bring that back again. If we did miss it, want to look right about the 35-yard line. We get a spin and a takedown, no flag on the play. Pretty big hold. We end up seeing a run back for a touchdown. So significant miss on this play, and we want to talk about how we can get this. We back this up. Kickoffs and punts are the hardest place to officiate because there's so many moving bodies and so many things happening. But if we kind of narrow it down into chunks of the field, and so for our umpire in this, or back judge in this particular case right here, if we look at these 3 players and watch what they do, we got a good shot at getting them for any fouls. For our official down here on the bottom, again, looking at these 2 players, maybe put this 3rd one in there, having awareness of these players back here, but just kind of focusing on what their action is. And if we look at what this player does right here, it's one of those 3 players is going to be the one that has the hold. So breaking down, so we're not looking at everything, but we're focusing on the return team and specific players on the return team, be it the 5 in front or the 2 nearest the front. Just having an awareness of what they're doing, we can get a whole lot of fouls here. So little trick there. We would like to see you further on the field, maybe at the numbers, so you can get a better look, or at least taking steps up the field, not moving too much, but getting to a place where you can observe those blocks happen, and that way we can get this hold. Pretty big miss. Want to make sure we get it. Hopefully you pregame this and talk about who we're going to watch on these types of plays. Our second play today involves a receiver being forced out of bounds or out of bounds on their own and then coming back in to touch a legal forward pass. So we want to keep our attention on this receiver right up here and what's going to happen with him. We'll let the play run. We're going to see him run a vertical route, and appears to be some contact that forces him out of bounds, makes a catch, and then goes in for a touchdown. So what we need to know is how are we going to handle this? First off, right here, I'm going to freeze it. Our line of scrimmage official, this is your primary key. Let me back this up. That's your initial responsibility, single receiver to your side, so he's yours all the way. So we do a good job of holding still. We got to look and see, how does this player end up out of bounds? Is he forced out or is he out on his own? Kind of looks like he might have been forced out. This angle doesn't show whether or not that contact is significant enough to force him out of bounds. But let's assume he was forced out of bounds. If he was forced out of bounds, we need to know that he was forced out of bounds and can legally return back in and be the first to touch the pass. Typically, we have a hat down when a player is out of bounds. A receiver, an eligible receiver, is out of bounds. We have a hat down. All that hat down tells us is that we know how that receiver got out of bounds. We know whether he went out on his own or was forced out by a defender. So what we want to have here on this play is, once we recognize whether or not he was forced out or went out on his own, we're going to have a hat down. And it looks like we do a pretty good job of getting our hat down on this play. So now the next thing we need to judge is, did he reestablish? If this player was forced out and can legally return back into the field to play, did this player reestablish prior to making the catch? And if we freeze it right here, we can see looks like he has both feet in the green. So if he was forced out, then he is legal to get back in and catch this pass, and it should be good for a touchdown. Okay. Now, The other scenario is, what if he was not forced out? If he was not forced out, let's say we judge this that there was no contact that caused him to go out of bounds, and this receiver is out of bounds on his own. Well, now he's ineligible, and if he comes back in and is the first to touch, now we have a foul for illegal touching, and this carries with it a 5-yard penalty from the previous spot. So we got to have a flag down on this play if he was not forced out and came back in and caught this pass. If he caught the pass and he was still out of bounds, let's say he's out here and he catches the pass and is not reestablished, then we just have an incomplete pass. This is a lot to process on a play like this, and we really have to be sharp on our rules knowledge to know what we have and rule on it correctly. So to recap this play, first off, we need to make sure that we understand our initial responsibility. Second, we need to be able to see this action and judge whether or not this contact, if any, forced the receiver out of bounds or the receiver was out of bounds on his own. Then the next piece of the puzzle is, did this receiver reestablish in bounds, and is he legal to touch this pass? If he was forced out, then he can reestablish and can catch this pass. If he was not forced out, then he cannot come back in and reestablish and be the first to touch the pass. That's the foul with a 5-yard penalty and a loss of down. Tough play here. Talk about it in your pre-games and how you're going to handle this, and make sure that we see and know how these receivers end up out of bounds. Play number 3 this week involves catch, no catch, and whether or not we have a touchdown or not. And so let's going to let this play run through. We want to take a look at this receiver right here, number 88. I want to see his action and see what happens here. I'll let it play through, then we'll come back and talk about this play. Goes up. Looks like we might have a catch. Maybe we don't, but we signal a touchdown, so we're saying we have a catch. So this play involves the process of completing a catch. And so we got to talk about what comes into play when we're talking about completing the process of a catch. Well, let's break down what we need to have. A couple of 2-3 elements. First element we have to have is firm control of the ball. So if we watch this play, he goes up. He seems to have firm control of the ball, right? I don't think we can doubt he has firm control of that ball, comes down with it in his possession. We're good with that part. The second part of completing the process of a catch is a body part down in bounds, whether it be a foot, a knee, an elbow, a hand, a shoulder. We need to have firm control and a body part down in bounds. So we see he gets that piece. He has firm control, and looks like he gets 2 feet down. So we are 2/3 of the way to having a catch here. The next element that we need to have to complete the process of a catch is an element of time in order to perform an act common to the game of football. In other words, an element of time to become a runner, to go from a receiver who's trying to catch a pass to completing that act and becoming a runner, or performing an act common to the game, gaining full control, getting a body part down, and then reaching with the ball or doing something of that sort. If you're old enough to remember the Terrell Owens play, was that a catch or not a catch? Well, we've defined it now to include an act common to the game as part of the criteria of what is the process of completing the catch. So the other piece that isn't in play on this, but let's say this receiver was going to the ground. They would have to survive the ground with firm control of the ball, and that ball couldn't jostle. They couldn't lose possession and regain possession. If they ended up out of bounds, it wouldn't be a catch. So we basically have 3 elements, and the third element has some sub-elements to it. So the first element is firm control. Second element is body part down. And the third element with its sub-elements is an element of time to complete an act common to a game. In other words, can that receiver become a runner? Or can they perform an act that's common to the game in terms of reaching the ball forward, tucking the ball away, doing things like that? And the other sub-element is if they are going to the ground, they must survive the ground with possession of the ball. So this play provides some challenges for us. We meet 2 out of 3 criteria. We have firm control, we have body part down, but we do not have that third element, which is element of time, or an act common to the game. This receiver does almost everything he needs to, but this defender knocks this ball out so quickly that we do not have that element of time to consider this a completed catch. So think about this when we're ruling on these types of plays. Is this a catch or not a catch? Didn't complete the catch because did not complete the element of time to perform an act common to the game. In other words, he didn't have time to become a runner. Okay? And if we want to simplify this even more, let's say this catch happened at the 30-yard line, either going in or coming out. Would we call this a catch and a fumble and let the defense recover this? By philosophy, we wouldn't. This would be an incomplete pass anywhere else on the field because he did not have the element of time to complete the catch. So think about that philosophy. Think about that thinking when we're talking about these tight plays as we get in the end zone. Did they meet all three criteria? And if this play happened in the middle of the field, would we still want this a catch and a fumble? And the answer to that question is no. Talk about what elements complete a catch and make sure we're ready for these plays this week. Play number 4 this week involves another scoring play, a pass play. I want to take a look at our back judge. He's right here. Want to look at our back judge and what our back judge does on this play. Does a really good job of getting to the end line to cover this play and judge whether or not this player is inbounds, out of bounds, and completes the catch. We can see he's moving back. We'd like to be there sooner, but he does get there and does have a good look at how this play folds out. That receiver has a foot in bounds, maintains control of the ball, goes to the ground, still has the ball after they go to the ground, completes the act of a catch. We want to call this a touchdown every time. So really good job to recognize the route, get to the back of the end zone, and watch that end line back there because that foot comes down very quickly close to that end line. Good work by our back judge here. Our next play involves goal line mechanics and line of scrimmage officials. I'll let this play through, and then we can talk about how this was handled and what are our priorities, right? If you look at this play, let me forward it up a little bit. If we look at this play, we see we are snapping just inside the 10-yard line. And when this play snapped, we have our line judge still right here inside the 10, not at the pylon. Typically, we would like our line judge to get to the pylon and then work backwards on a play like this. But for some reason, this line judge recognizes that we have a quick pass out to the side. And so he's going to stick around to judge whether this pass is behind or beyond, forward or backward. And so once that happens, he's out for the pylon. So we got to recognize this as a crew and talk about this as a crew because now the goal line really is going to belong to the umpire. Our umpire is the only one that's going to have a look down that goal line, and they're going to have to team officiate this play at the pylon. And we're going to see this runner gets knocked out of bounds probably about the 3-4 yard line. But this is a tough situation. We gotta make decisions, right? Do I get to the goal line and then work backwards, or do I work this pass and judge whether this is forward, behind, beyond, backward, or behind? Those types of decisions. Our headline judge up here, if we can take a look at our headline judge up here, we would like for that headline judge to get to the goal line so at least they can help with goal line. But this is just one tough play. In 5-person mechanics, we run into these plays all the time when we get into a compressed field inside the red zone where, do I stay? Do I go? I mean, ideally, we want you at the goal line and work your way backwards. In this particular case, if you felt that the priority was this pass, then by all means, make that decision and judge the legality of that pass. Just know that umpire, you're going to have to be ready to pick up the slack on a play like this. So that way we can know if this is a scoring play. Fortunately, we get a clean play that ends about the 3 or 4 yard line, and we live to fight another day, and we don't have any blow up at the pylon. But talk about how we want to handle a compressed field in the red zone, especially when we're inside the 10, when there's not a lot of time and only so many things we can watch. Play 6 this week involves defensive offsides and false starts. Before we run the play, I want to talk a little bit about how we can decide and help ourselves judge defensive offsides versus false starts. And it starts with our positioning. So if we look, we are snapping right here on the 39-yard line. So if we draw a line down the 39-yard line, we can pretty much guess that our line of scrimmage official here and our line of scrimmage official here, we can see it right here, they are straddling the 39-yard line. Now, I am not a line of scrimmage official, but the officials that I work with that work line of scrimmage talk about giving themselves an angle. So they move actually a step up and put this back leg on the line and their front leg a little ahead, giving them an angle in to see what's happening with the offense line and the ball. Same thing for the officials, for the line of scrimmage official on the bottom. So that gives them some an angle to see what's happening. When they straddle it, they don't get good angles. When they put a foot ahead, they're looking kind of back into it. Then they can judge a lot of things. The next thing that they look at is how tight are these defensive linemen lined up right here. We can see our nose guard is pretty tight, so any forward movement by our nose guard is probably going to end up in a defensive offsides foul because he's tight. If he's any tighter, then absolutely any movement's going to get him in. Our defensive ends that are standing right here, they are pretty far back, and so they have a little more leeway to move forward. But all that is to say that if I know the alignment of where the defense is, then I don't need really to watch the defense. I just need to know if they move and about how far they do move when they do move. What I can look at is I can look at the ball and I can look at my tackle. And I can judge whether or not they move early or not. Okay? What the defense does, how the defense moves, I can always catch up to that a little bit later because I know where they are aligned. The offensive line is really where I want to keep my focus, the ball and my tackle, so I can see when they move to make sure I don't have a false start. So when we let this play run, we're going to see this is a pretty clear case of a defensive offside. Now we have this receiver at the top over here that kind of moves a little bit. Let me back it up a little more. So, once they get up here, they get set. Is he set long enough? Does he meet the definition of being set for an entire second? And do we want to turn this into a false start? I think we want to get the obvious foul right here. His lack of being set had no material effect on whether or not this defense jumped early. So we want to go the DOF on this particular play. Now, if this receiver up here never gets set and this defense never moves and then they try and run this play, then we want to shut this down for a false start because not all 11 players came set for a second, okay? But yeah, lot to digest here. Little trick, hopefully that works for you in terms of how you can judge defensive offsides versus false starts when it comes to line play. But on this particular play, we want to get the obvious foul. This back never really sets up. This receiver never really sets up for a full second. But the big foul is this defensive offside. That's what we want to get on this play, and let's warn this wide receiver to get set before they snap the ball. Our last play this week is another catch no catch play. We're going to watch this play develop. We're going to have a pass down to the bottom of the screen near the goal line. All right, what do you got? We talked about this play earlier, the pass to the back of the end zone with the receiver making firm control, coming down, and the ball comes out pretty quick. On this particular play, what do you got? I'll let you watch it one more time. I'll come back to this play next week. You guys talk about this in your pregames, and then we'll talk about this play next week. If you have any feedback on this play, make sure you reach out to us on the video. Make sure you reach out to us. Have great games this week. Travel safe. Have some solid pre-games, and make sure that we're making our fouls big and that we are moving with purpose. Have a great week, everyone.
As we close out this week's Plays of the Week, don't forget to send any interesting plays to our Huddle program for feedback. Not only can reviewing film help you better adjudicate similar situations, but it's a valuable tool for improving your mechanics and positioning. Take the time to watch yourself and learn from it. Have fun this week, safe travels to those on the road, and remember, make them big.